cutting Europe right here. This is where the main ice ages occurred, right here. Cutting across the 51st parallel up here. Cutting Europe in half. Ice mountains occur. Now this is all geology. This is all in the geology books, but they don't talk about it this way. They talk about it in a very interesting way, which allows them to skirt the issue of where were your people when this was going on. They very shrewdly have been able to develop textbooks and curriculums for children and students that avoids important questions that would the teacher would have to say certain things in the class in order to answer the question. Otherwise, it's not going to follow common sense. Just like all anyone has to do, if you want to knock them off in terms of the Middle East, is ask them, does east travel north to south? If you consider something to be east or west, would whatever is above it or below it still be east and west? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like if you're talking about Middle America is middle whether it is in the northern part of the United States or in the southern parts of the United States. It's still in the middle of the United States. So if that is true, if a country up in this area here, like Libya, would be considered Middle East, then you've got to say South Africa is in the Middle East also. Ask your professor that. And they'll look at you as if you're crazy. And they'll say, but how can you then say that Libya is in the Middle East? So then it comes down to the fact, of course, it's a geopolitical term. They have created this. It is an illusion. But one of the things that troubles me about an illusion is that if you can get someone to make that illusion a reality, it's no longer an illusion. It's a reality. So many of us as people on this planet, and this is what many of the peoples within the Moorish Science Temple are saying, is we are walking around allowing people to call us things that we're not. And once we step out of being called that, they will not legally be able to treat you a certain way by the nature of the way in which they set up their own law. That's why they chased that brother on Rikers Island that was developing that way of just moving out and becoming independent. They locked him off. They scared people around him so nobody would listen to what this brother was saying about their law. They have a panther by the tail. They're too weak to keep spinning it, but too afraid to let it go. So they've got a dilemma. But they made their dilemma our dilemma, because now we don't know who we are. We don't understand that the spread of Christianity to the end of this whole spread here is the movement of African peoples with this faith system in different parts, because they're being chased out by the Romans. They're leaving because of the Romans. And they're bringing this doctrine with them, because the Christian faith system is nothing more or less, when you look at its tenets, when you read the walls in ancient Kemet and you read their New Testament, Christianity is no more, no less than the Amen priesthood. In fact, my research says that the Christ that we look at as a person never existed, but that at this time in history in Egypt there was groups of priests and priestesshood that swore to the allegiance of Amen. And that's why you have words like Amen at the end of the prayers. That's why you have so many different fundamental Christian ethics are deeply embedded in the Kemetic story. You don't see it. But what they don't tell you is that the early Christians hid in the temples of Egypt to practice their Mass. And what better way to write your Mass than by writing what you see on the walls? Because what they wrote was what they saw on the walls. The Greeks got their paper from a place up in here. It was known as Phoenicia, up in this area here. That's where they got their paper. Today it's called Lebanon. In the capital of this area was a place known as Byblos. That's where the Greeks got their paper to write their holy book that they copied from the walls of Egypt. So what they did is they took the word of the capital, where they got the paper from, and that's what they called the book. So Byblos became Bible. And the first Bible was written in Greek. And there is no Greek language, so the script must be Ethiopic. But what better sense to think that, because that's where the Amen priesthood was born. Amen priesthood wasn't born in Egypt. The Amen priesthood was born in Ethiopia, such as Atanism, which gave birth to Judaism. See, Professor Clark used to teach us that when Africans get their show on the road, when Africans get their program together, they then take it on the road. So much of what they brought, even in Kemet, we're looking at the writings, hieroglyphics. We're finding out that hieroglyphics wasn't born in Egypt, that it was brought there. That we're seeing the formation of this writing almost like it appeared in this land overnight. But nothing, as we said before, can appear anything overnight. You've got to see where the thought is, and all you got to do is go down into Sudan to a place called Kustal, and you'll see where they were writing Medu-Neter 100 to 120 years before the first dynasty of ancient Kemet. So the formation of the first dynasty is merely an astronomical observatory. That's where we moved into another house. But that had nothing to do with an actual individual. Egypt and Kemet had always been African. They'd always been doing things. It's not like it just started in 4100 BCE. They've been doing things for thousands of years. The evidence of agriculture goes back 10,800 years. Now, you know, they throw out 800 and 700. It don't mean a thing to me. I'm telling you, you can go back hundreds of thousands of years. Just by what the Kemites knew about astronomy. If you have a 26,000 year calendar, you would have to have experienced that a couple of times. You just can't write a calendar the first 26,000 years. You don't even know if those stars are going to return back. So you've got to experience it a second time, and then maybe even a third time before you even think about maybe there's a pattern here. And of course there's evidence in Kenya of all of this astronomical observatory. But see, the key about Egypt is that the skies are so clear. When you have clear skies, astronomy comes better to you because you can see things better. So that's why Kemet was the place. It's just like if all of us in this room were studying something, but we all knew that in Brooklyn you wouldn't get a good sight of it, so we all had to find a way to get to Staten Island. Let's say we all got to Staten Island, then we had a better view of things. We're still all the same African people. We just moved to another location to get a better sight of what we were looking at. And that's what Africans did along the Happy River. They moved along the river in order to get a better sight of the skies. And because of the heavy monsoons and the rains in the central or the inner Africa, they never were able to get good sight, so they moved to where they could, and Kemet was the place. It was only natural. But the same people that were down here were the same people that came up here. The evidence of it is that there's no evidence of this up here. You've got to show me evidence here. You've got to show me something that would lead you to go there. You just can't show me overnight. That's a miracle. I believe in miracles, but not those kind. So the spread of Christianity in the 4th century saw all of this area become Christian. But once again, what are you looking at? You're looking at everything centered on Africa. It was born here. The language came out of here. Africa. The northeastern part of Africa. All of this would have been, throughout ancient times, would have been African. Because remember, when as Africans first moved out, the first places they would have hit were all of the coasts of wherever their surrounding area was. So you have a history of African folk in this area, where they were African folk living for thousands of years as African people. No Europeans existed on the planet at this time. Europeans did not exist. They just were not there. Nor did the Ice Age occur yet, so you did not have that cold. This was known as the interstadial, between the Riss, R-I-S-S, and you had the Gunz, the Mindel, the Riss, and the Worm glaciation. The only reason why we as a human family have to be concerned about the Worm is because that's the only time when humans had moved out, Africans had moved out into the world. The other three, Africans, as we see our research so far, we do not see Africans in this part of the world. Again, that can all change, because nothing I say here is written in stone. What I do know is that research shows us this. But what I'm saying is that our great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren will get a better handle of this. And this is why it's important to have this in our schools. So the spread of Christianity to the 4th century is important here because when you look at Kemet, Inner Africa, as we did in the beginning, you then go up to Kemet, which is the mouthpiece for the inner African mind. You then go to Greeks. You then go to Romans. You went to the Byzantium. Now we're looking at the 4th century. So you see, chronologically, we have accounted for everything that has occurred since we as conscious people could speak on that. Okay? Now, along with looking at Christianity from its inception, or the 00 mark, to the 4th century, or 400 AD, we then move to another area which is important. So this area this is the migrations of people in the 5th century. Because you see, what's happening now is that there are more people coming from this part of the world. See, this is what's happening now. You have the northern people, the Germanic tribes coming down, and this movement is what's going to destroy the so-called Holy Roman Empire. That's what's going to crush it. When they talked about the Roman Empire falling, this is the point that it's falling. during the